So we are back again for one more interesting session. So this session is not talking about the particular concepts of valuations or like financial modeling. It is just basically asking all the queries that you guys have about the interview preparation or like some of the concepts like which you feel are doubtful for you and which you want to ask me, which can be asked in the interview as well. Right. Like before taking your questions, like one more thing I would like to suggest and I would like to request to all of you is please watch all the modules because majorly 99% of the concepts have been covered in all the modules, in all those 65 modules that we have on the website. Everything has been covered from the most basic to most advanced. And again, the live sessions, the recordings of the live sessions have also been included in that website or that portal so that you guys can watch the live sessions in case we're not able to attend it on the same day, right? So a lot of people are facing interviews nowadays and they're asking me concerns on WhatsApp and LinkedIn, right? So feel free to ask me your concerns. If you guys are not asking me your concerns, so basically in that scenario, I won't get to know that whether is your interview scheduled, for which company you are going for, right? And which question have they asked for. Correct. So basically, all these questions you need to ask me. You need to ask me that I am going for this and this company ka interview, right? And this company is like located this, and I'm going for this profile. So all these things you have to ask me. Until and unless you don't ask me these things, I won't be able to get to know that for which company you are going for, right? So a lot of active people, I would say, of these curriculum, right? Approximately like 15,000 students have enrolled for this curriculum as of now, but the active ones are clearly approaching me that I'm going for this process of interview. I'm going for this company and this profile. And please suggest me the Q&A or please guide me that which questions can they ask me. So these things you have to ask me, you have to tell me. Because all the placement sessions and the kind of the interview sessions like which I'm taking live or which are recorded on the website are in general for all the profiles in the finance sector for consulting or investment banking. But for specific processes, for specific companies, for specific profiles, you guys have to approach me and tell me कि मोरा मेरा इस company का interview है and ये profile है, so please guide me, right? So in this way, like we'll be able to schedule some mock sessions for you for personal interviews or for the GD process and whatsoever. Correct. So going forward, we have around 450 participants joined in the Zoom call. And I'm getting a questions. Yeah, the chat is open for all of you. Just keep on sending me your questions regarding the interview process and I'll get back to you. Yeah. And I'll be taking just the most important questions, like which are in the group chat. A few of the questions which will be there, like which might be a part of the modules or which will be a part of the module, like two basic questions, right? So like, for example, if something like someone in the group chat asks me, right, key, like what is DCF model and how is it different from relative valuation model? Again, I won't be answering such type of questions because I have covered these valuation techniques in deep in the modules. It clearly states that you guys have not watched the modules. So in that scenario, you have to watch the modules and ask me the concerns. Complicated queries, concepts like which are difficult to understand or might not be stated in the modules, or I might not have discussed them, I'll be more than happy to guide you for those questions, right? So someone in the chat box, if I'll just take your names as well, like if you guys are comfortable with, okay. So like Surniti. Hi Surniti. So Surniti is appearing for the interview at KPMG, right? At KPMG. So like it's a KPMG global or like it's KPMG local one, the India one. If you can just tell me that. So Surniti is appearing for the KPMG global interview. Yes. So like which is the process? Like I got your question. I got your question. I tell to the wider audience as well. But which profile are you appearing for? Right, completely like it's a financial modeling profile. Got it. So she's like appearing for a financial modeling profile and she want to ask us that, for example, if in the interview they ask us a question on the banking companies. So like her question is that whether we are looking like when we are looking for a banking company, like we should look for a price to earning ratio or a price to book value ratio. I'll repeat the question. The question is the girl is appearing for financial modeling and valuation profile at KPMG Global, Big Four, right? And her question is that when we are valuing a banking company, I told you that the valuation of a banking and insurance company, or be it a financial sector company, BFSI, banking, financial service, insurance company, is different from the other traditional companies, right? So her question, taking that concept ahead, is that whether we should use price to earning ratio or a price to book value ratio to value a banking company, right? See, ideally, this question, rarest possible chance is there, like they would be asking you like such a question, right? But in some of the advanced valuation and modeling questions, they tend to ask you this question, that when you are valuing a banking company, that whether you should use price to earning ratio or a price to book value ratio. See, that whenever, like both the ratios are fine with it, right? You might have seen top analysts and those investment bankers talking about banking companies and trying to value them on price to earning ratio or price to book value ratio. But price to book value ratio is a far better multiple. Why? Because like when we're talking about price to earning ratio, right? So first let's try to understand why not to use the price to earning ratio, like before trying to understand why to use the price to book value ratio. So coming back, why not to use the price to earning ratio is, see, like what is the formula for the price to earning ratio? It's nothing but the current share price of a particular stock divided by the earnings per share of the company. The current share price divided by the EPS of the company, and that is the formula, correct? So basically, when we are trying to calculate the price to earning of a company, we take the share price. The share price is nothing but what? It's almost equivalent as the market cap of the company. A market cap क्या होती है? Market cap is nothing but the number of shares into price, correct? So basically, in the numerator, we have taken one component of the market cap, share price, and denominator में, like we have taken EPS, earnings per share. I'll repeat, in numerator, we have taken a component of the market cap, that is the share price of a particular stock, divided by the earnings per share, EPS. Now, EPS is a component of what? How is EPS calculated? EPS is calculated by taking into consideration your earnings, your profit after tax, PAT, right? So, itna we know that EPS is a component of profit after tax. A very good metric to value any of the companies and taking into consideration the banks as well, right? But why we should not use this price to earning ratio, right? Or why we should rarely use this price to earning ratio? See, the earnings of the company can be manipulated anyhow, right? So like that can be like one reason. As I told you in the modules as well, cash flows are the best indicator, correct? And the second one is, like when we are talking about the earnings of the bank, banks are based out of the book value, because banks' main task is to take loans and give loans. And the difference in taking loan and giving loan, they make as a profit. The interest at which the banks have taken loan and the interest at which the banks will give out loans. In the difference, the bank tries to make a profit, and that is nothing but the net interest margin. So everything is based out of the book value of the banks or the assets of the bank. And the book value of the bank is nothing but what? It is the loans which the bank has given or taken. Correct? And we ultimately want to know the quality of the loans which the bank has taken or given. Because ultimately, for all those bad kind of loans or the loans which the bank is not sure about, that whether it will get money or not, the bank might have given loan to 100 people. But out of those 100 people, 10 or 20 might turn out to be defaulters. And for those defaulters people, the probable defaulters I'm not saying that 10 or 20 people will definitely default. The probability is there, but for all those probable defaulters, the provision will also need to be set to kept aside. Those provisions for losses, right? So like we talk about NPAs, gross NPAs and net NPAs, correct? So basically some provision had to be set aside and the book value will be adjusted, correct? Because ultimately when the provision, like when you are keeping more provisions for those bad loans, when you are keeping more provisions for those bad loans or setting aside more provisions for those bad loans, ultimately the cost of the company is increasing, because provision is nothing a kind of a cost which is affecting the profits of the bank, right? If you are keeping more provisions aside, ultimately the profits of the bank will come down, because the bank will not have free spare cash flows or profits like with itself. Because more of the costing or the majority of the costing of the bank will go to maintain that reserves, right? So when we're talking about banks, we need to take into consideration the book value of the bank, because the book value and further the adjusted book value, like which has taken into consideration all the loans adjusted with the provisions, how much provision the bank has kept. Price is the same as price to earning ratio. So in that case, price by book value or price to adjusted book value we can take into consideration, which has the assets of the bank, that is nothing but the loans adjusted with the provisions. Correct. So all these things we can take into consideration. And that is why we tend to use the price to book value more, because bank is all about assets and loans. It's also about earnings as well. But that provision the concept comes into place. It can happen that the earnings of the bank are too high, too high, too high. But that bank can also fail. Why? Because it can happen that that bank might not have kept aside certain amount of provisions for those bad loans. And that is where the earnings of the bank were too high. But there can be a bank whose earnings were low, but like decently stable, but the provisions were high. That bank is a safer one. If the people tend to default on those loans, that stable earnings will a bank which kept a higher amount of provisions has a higher chance to succeed and survive, rather than a higher earnings bank having zero or negligible amount of provisions for those bad loans. So these things we need to take into consideration. Okay. So one additional question. Is loan provision of banks a part of the MCLR rate of that bank? See, loan provisions, they're keeping aside a separate amount, right? They won't be using, whether see, giving loans or taking loans, they might be using that rate of MCLR, right? That particular rate, like they might be using it. But when they are calculating the provision, how much provision they have to keep aside, right? So again, see, when you are taking मान लो like 100 rupees का loan, right? Like just for sake of simplicity, and 10% you are paying interest. Okay, so at the end of the year, like it's 110. So bank will reserve that 110 like in the provisions. So ultimately the bank has taken taken into consideration that interest calculation along with the principal amount, right? So indirectly, I would say that rate, like which was applied on that loan, is taken into consideration while calculating that provision, right? But not directly. Because ultimately, like when you have to calculate the interest on that principal amount, that rate of interest has to be taken into consideration, right? So that is one thing. But like one more concept, I would just like to extend it. We talked about price to earning and price to book value for banks. A question I can ask you is that whether to use the return on equity or the return on capital employed for banks. ROCE use करना है banks के लिए, or you have to use ROE. We all know that what these ratios are. The return on equity, it takes into consideration your equity component only. The return on capital employed, it takes into consideration both equity and debt, right? And the formula is a bit of different, right? And we know the difference because I've talked about these in my module. So like I won't be repeating the same. Okay. I posted a LinkedIn post on this as well, right? Like whether to use ROCE or ROE for banks. Always use ROE for banks, return on equity. I'm repeating this point. Always use return on equity for banks and not the return on capital employed. Why? Because when we are talking about the return on capital employed, it basically states how much return we are getting or how much return the bank is getting upon the equity and debt. Correct? But when we are talking about the return on equity, it just takes into consideration the equity component. Okay. So basically, we need to understand debt for a bank, debt for a bank, right? It is a kind of a raw material. It's a kind of source for the bank. अगर बैंक को debt नहीं मिलेगा, if the bank will not get debt, the bank will not be able to give debt to the other people. If I'm not lending my money to bank to give me certain interest, because ultimately I am the person who has given money to bank has borrowed my money, and bank will be paying me a fixed rate of interest, be it FDs or some short-term money market instrument. And in return, the bank will be lending that money to some other party and getting a higher rate of interest. So debt is basically not a use, but a raw material. It's a raw material for banks. अगर debt बैंक के पास नहीं होगा तो बैंक काम नहीं करेगा. But for the other companies, debt is not a raw material. It is not compulsory that they have to borrow debt, be it for Adani, be it for Reliance, be it for HUL, be it for Nestle. But they take debt, correct? But it's not mandatory for them. But for a bank, it's mandatory to take debt. And here you need to understand for which companies it's mandatory to take debt. For those companies, it tends to be a raw material for banks. And for those companies where it's not mandatory, for those companies, you can calculate the ROCE. So debt के बिना बैंक नहीं चल सकता. Banking company, NBFC, insurance, these companies take debt. So for these companies, ROE you have to calculate. And similarly, the same question arises, free cash flow to firm calculate करें या free cash flow to equity calculate करें. For banks, always calculate free cash flow to equity and never free cash flow to firm. For the other companies, for all the sectors, barring the BFSI space, we tend to calculate FCFF, free cash flow to firm. But for banks, use free cash flow to equities. The reason stands the same because debt is a raw material for bank. Debt nahi aayega, it's mandatory. Bank ko debt chahiye. Bank business will stop. Same for insurance and non-bank financial companies. They need debt. And ultimately, it can also happen that when you are calculating that free cash flow to equities, right? Sometimes like it happens, the cash flows are not available, right? Or you are like not able to calculate the cash flows, like which you will discount at the appropriate cost of equity. In that case, people tend to take dividends or buybacks. I have explained a dividend discount model in my modules. For everyone who have not watched the modules as of now, they might sound it new, but I've talked about the dividend discount model in which I'm trying to discount the dividends by a cost of capital and calculating the intrinsic value or the intrinsic price of a share, right? So all those future projected dividends I'm taking into consideration. How to project that dividends, how to calculate that dividends. Again, that can be taken from the past history of the bank. A certain rate can be applied on the basis of the average past rate of dividends. Or if out of 100 rupees, the company has retained 90 rupees, so that 10 rupees we can assume as a dividend. And here assume word is very important. It can happen that 10 rupees is not given as dividends or maybe given as dividends, because financial modeling is all about assumptions. Your model can be completely wrong, partially wrong, fairly accurate, or 100% accurate as well. All these things I've talked about in my modules. And I suggest also, like along with the modules, read my LinkedIn posts. I try to update these concepts on my LinkedIn post as well, right? So these dividends we can take into consideration, plus the buybacks. And why the buybacks, right? Because dividends and buybacks, these are two sources by which they can satisfy the shareholders, right? Dividends may they directly give the dividend to shareholders on the basis of a share value, like some percentage, which is taxable in the hands of shareholder. But buybacks are not taxable in the hands of shareholders. The company pays the buyback tax, right? So the amount of cash like which has been used in the buyback or the dividends can be taken into consideration, or we tend to call them as the augmented dividends. Augmented, 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 augmented dividends. It means expected dividends kitna company pay karegi. I've talked about these things in my modules and LinkedIn posts. So unko padho, all these concepts will be far less clear to you, because like this session is all about your queries or interview questions, right? Deep dive I've talked about in all those modules and previous live sessions का recording. ठीक है, तो उस पे ध्यान दो. Any more questions? ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीज मैंने बताई है, इसको याद रखना. So like one question is there from Vikram. How to value those insurance companies? More than 12, 13 metrics I've tried to talk about in my live sessions. Please watch that. You'll get to know everything about it. Baki the concept for FCFE, return on equity, and price to book value, it remains the same. Price to book value, like an insurance company, right? People tend to use embedded value, right? They tend to use embedded value. So I've talked about what is embedded value, how to calculate embedded value, correct? Price to embedded value they tend to use. The price to book हम banks में use कर रहे हैं, वहाँ पे price to embedded value they tend to use. Like where they are taking into consideration the adjusted net worth plus the present value of the existing business. Adjusted net worth plus the present value of the existing business is your embedded value. And usme, when you add the present value of the future business, you get the equity value. And further, you tend to calculate the distance to market cap, where you are taking equity value minus embedded value by your margins. All these complicated concepts I've talked in my modules, not to worry about that. Okay, so just get back those modules and ask me. Any more questions? I'm just skipping a few of the questions in which I've covered the points. कि natural gas valuation में just try to understand the option pricing. Option pricing is the most important method to value a natural resource firm, oil and gas company को, mineral firm को, like renewable energy firm को, coal firm को, in सबको like if you have to value option pricing method. It's also called a contingent claims method. Option pricing method is also called contingent claims method, right? I've shared the study material of the financial derivatives and risk management on the group. Refer that to get to understand these things. नहीं आता समझ, then ask me. Okay? पूछना है तो जितनी बारी पूछो, right? So there is no problem in that. Ask me endless amount of times. How is the life in a investment banking firm? It will be hectic. At least 12 hours will have to work. ठीक है, तो मान के चलो. And 12 घंटे minimum, I'm telling you. 12 hours minimum, like if you're into a core consulting or IB role. 12 hours minimum you have to work. But for that, they will give you everything, all the perks, facilities, salaries, increments. If you are working good, increments are like subject to your work, correct? Cab services, your transportation services, insurances, your food meal allowance, outside parties, outside trips, like everything they will give you, right? In those firms. Where is the hiring season for the IBs and equity research? People tend to say कि like एक specific month आता है, like 4-5 महीने, like then they do the hiring. It is 365 a days. Hiring goes on full year. ठीक है, like there can be certain situations like the fear of recession, like as we can see currently. The openings are freezed in big fours and top investment banking firms like JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs. They're just hiring the premium candidates, like even if they're hiring from outside. You might see the openings on LinkedIn portal and different naukri.com, but those are just for face. They will just see like your resume. If you are a premium one, right? Extraordinary skill set person, they might call you, but like there is a freeze, right? In these kind of situations, you can't do anything. But when like the last year, like when this situation of freeze or recession fear wasn't there, they were hiring at a very high rate, right? So ideally they hire like whole year, but the situation can be quite weak at times, as we can see currently. But abhi the situation has started to get better. Like in the previous 5-6 months, the situation was quite tough. But now a few of the openings have started to come. Few से मेरा मतलब है not 30-40, like 1 or 2 I'm saying, rare openings. But आगे आगे जैसे like 1-2 months और आगे like pass on होते हैं. And अगर इस साल US में recession नहीं आया, if this year the recession doesn't come in US, the openings can come fledged, मतलब कि बिखर के openings आएंगे. ठीक है? Any more questions? IT कंपनी के लिए like price to earning is the best one. Price to book value उसके लिए बिल्कुल यूज मत करना, because earnings के basis पे we tend to value the IT companies. Other ratio that you can use is book to build ratio. Like there is a bill to book ratio. Bill to book ratio. Bill to book ratio. For the IT companies, it can be used for like heavy industrial companies also, like HAL, BHE or power companies. For semiconductor companies also, bill to book. So basically it states ki, for example, if I have placed 100 orders, right? If I have placed 100 orders, out of 100 orders, how many orders have been billed? Billed, matlab 100 में से मैंने कितने ऑर्डर्स कंप्लीट करे. बुकिंग 100 की हुई, like 100 orders have been booked, but the orders completed have been 70. So my bill to book ratio, it turns out to be how much I have done, like 70, right? So also ऐसा भी होता है, it can happen, you can try to compare your revenues with the number of orders that you have received, right? It can happen कि अभी जो current orders हैं, मान लो कि 100 orders हैं, उससे कंपनी को रेवेन्यू आ रहा है मान लो कि 200 करोड़ का. आउट ऑफ 100 orders the company is having is like making a revenue of 200 crores, right? If additional like 100 orders comes into place, then company का revenue कितना होगा, right? If orders are coming, so like we need to see like whether we are like analyzing an IT company, power sector company, orders should be on a continuous state. अगर orders आना stop हो रहे हैं, if the orders are stopping to come, if the orders are not coming for the company, it's bad for the company. But the orders should continuously come, and the company should be able to make revenue out of those orders, right? So ultimately, like when we're talking about this book to bill ratio or this bill to book ratio, right? So we ultimately want this ratio should be as high as possible. ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा अपने पास orders आए, and ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा like we should complete those orders. Okay, book to bill ratio, like bill to book ratio, they tend to say. And IT companies में ना, you also need to take into consideration the cost pyramid. The cost pyramid should be flat. It means all those new candidates like that are coming into place, they should not command higher salaries than the previous candidates as happened previous year in the IT companies. अगर ऐसा हो रहा है, so it can happen, the bubble in the IT companies can burst anytime that bursted like this year when they laid out hundreds and thousands of employees. So cost pyramid of this IT companies, like it should be flat ideally. That is, the new employees who are coming to join the company should not be paid excessively higher salaries as compared to previous employees. One more question. Would you recommend some certification to boost the chance of getting shortlisted? I guess you guys are already there into my certification curriculum. Watch my modules, watch my live sessions, placement sessions, and a separate curriculum. A few of the people are like enrolled into a separate curriculum of mine, like which is completely dedicated towards placement training. Okay, so this course is like available to them, but that particular segment of people are towards placement training. उनको I guide A to Z for placement. GD हो गया, PI हो गया, A to Z I guide them for everything. जो भी companies मेरे पास आती हैं, like if someone like in my referral wants a good candidate, I try to refer that particular person. So those are separate, I would say, a curriculum or a separate training, like which are for those specific students who have like enrolled into it. ठीक है, तो अभी ये सब like questions and all and mock sheets and ये सब उसमें मैं दूंगा. So like if anyone of else like is like interested to go into that, you guys can join that as well, because अभी वहाँ पे like questions देना मैं start कर रहा हूँ. ठीक है, so that is one thing. Any more questions? How many rounds are there? It can range from 3 rounds to even 15 rounds even for like investment bank. Okay, so be ready for a rigorous process. GD भी होगा. अगर like campus recruit हो, then GD होगा. बाहर से अगर आ रहे हो like from other company to another, then GD might not be there. I'll be sharing the GD topics as well, not to worry. Any questions? Yes, Excel सीख लो अच्छे से. Tableau and Power BI. Learn Excel, Tableau and Power BI from basic to advanced. Advanced में they will make you do anything, and they will make you practically build dashboards on Excel. Your interviewer will be sitting in front of you and he will say you to prepare a dashboard on Excel, on Tableau and Power BI. You need to be so dynamic into that. So usko very fastly like you have to use. You need to know the most advanced formulas. कि कैसे that 10 minutes का task can be put down to just 1 minute or just a matter of seconds. If you are interested, you can enroll into my curriculum as well for Excel, Power BI and dashboards. So that is one thing. Because Excel में क्या होगा ना, it can happen You have to have knowledge about Excel, right? Like fair knowledge about Excel. But the other candidate has knowledge about advanced Excel. Candidate A and candidate B. So good in finance, so good in like investment banking concepts and financial modeling. But candidate A has fair knowledge in Excel and knows like nothing about Tableau and Power BI. But candidate B has advanced knowledge on Excel, VBA, macros, advanced formulas, knows Tableau and Power BI. Like he will get selected. And if job के बाद पता नहीं लगाएंगे, they'll ask you in the process. They will give you tasks to do in front of them. And why in front of them? Because if you are not doing in front of them, you might take help of someone else and succeed. So samne they will make you work in an offline scenario. How many of you are good with advanced Excel, Tableau, and Power BI? Advanced Excel, Tableau, Power BI, Power Query, VBA macros, and artificial intelligence in Excel and Power BI. How many of you have advanced knowledge? I'm not saying like you are perfect, like no one is perfect, like even I'm not perfect. But having advanced knowledge on Excel, कि mouse को तो छेड़ना ही नहीं है, like बिना mouse को use करें, like you're able to use. And even like most of the companies are testing this Excel, Power BI and Tableau in the first round itself. वो बोलते हैं कि अगर Excel, Tableau, Power BI आता है ठीक है, उसके बाद like in the second round they ask you like about the questions on financial modeling and valuation. How good you are in financial modeling and valuation, like it doesn't matter to them. Excel, Tableau, Power BI आना चाहिए. Like since I work at JP Morgan, what my managers and seniors are doing, like while taking the process in the first round only, after the introduction, they're giving task on Excel, Power BI and Tableau. जो करके दे रहा है उसको like they are like just putting in the second round, third round, and like whatsoever. How like people are saying yes, 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 but majority of the answer says maybe, no, don't know. You have to know. It doesn't mean that you are in a BCom or like you are doing undergraduation or post graduation and you are saying that once we land into a job, like we'll do that. Job में land करने के लिए ही like you have to do. Like once you land into a job, those people will be expecting you that you know like advanced Excel. And if you don't know advanced Excel, Tableau, Power BI, they'll make a mockery out of you. I'm telling you. And that is the culture in these companies. They expect you and like no one will teach you the functions. Macros, VBAs, coding वैसे करते हैं झटके में. ठीक है, so these things you need to understand and know. So wait मत करो. Even if someone is a school going student, because a few of the school going students like enrolled into my curriculum of class 11th and 12th, Excel अभी से सीख लो. Because it's not sure कि like graduation के बाद तुम like MBA करोगे या like CFA करोगे या नहीं, or like you straightforward like land into a job after the graduation. Excel सीख लो, my personal advice. And I be like currently I'm running with an offer also on Excel. So that's a complete curriculum on like from basic to advanced Excel. It will teach you the most basic formula, बिल्कुल बच्चों वाले, to the most advanced, which really people talk about. You will have all those updates on Excel because Excel tend to upgrade itself every year, and it has some new formulas, right? Like which people don't talk about, and even the YouTube videos are like not available on that. Those new formulas I'll provide you. Like you will learn about coding in Excel, VB and macros. Like you'll be getting all the updates in Excel from me. Tableau, like you'll learn how to create a dashboard on Excel, on Tableau also, on Power BI also. Power Query, you will learn. You will learn artificial intelligence on Excel. How, like without even using functions in Excel or without even using the formulas or tools, you guys can create a dashboard in just 30 seconds. सोचने की भी नीड नहीं है. एक क्लिक करा and dashboard सामने आ जाएगा. More than 30 plus templates I will give you. And one more software, like which is being used aggressively nowadays by companies. That is a surprise software, like for the candidates. So that software is included. So all those trainings would be there, like both the modules and live lectures. Finance with Excel bhi hoga usme, like if you want to learn about the Monte Carlo simulation, auto correlation, regression in Excel, how to value company like that we have talked about in the 6 and 1 also. But financial derivatives, like option pricing models, like all those in Excel, like financial Excel, marketing Excel, HR Excel, statistical Excel, all Excels are there. And same for Tableau, Power BI and Power Query. If you guys are interested, you can enroll for that as well, because currently I'm running some special discounts and features like for like some of the colleges at Mumbai, right? Because they have like collaborated with me for these things. So you guys can be a part of those training sessions if you want to be. So that's it from my side. If any more queries and questions, feel free to ping me on WhatsApp, LinkedIn, website, like anywhere you are comfortable with, right? And जब interview है, date है, role है, tell me. Till the point of time you guys won't tell me that I have this interview and process, I won't get to know. ठीक है? So start telling me. So this is all for today then. See you guys. Thank you.